Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and I am here with a bonus track from the album Wonderworld. We're winding down our last two songs, folks, and I have not heard this song yet. I specifically have not listened to it so that the podcast would have my actual first reaction. And interestingly, it was written by all five members of the band at this time: Ken Hensley, David Byron, Mick Box, Gary Thain, and of course, Lee Kerslake. Now, while this was recorded for the Wonderworld sessions in '74, the first time it actually was put out there for public consumption was not until 1996 for the box set A Time of Revelation. So 22 years, this thing just sat there and no one knew it existed. So it's really cool thinking about the fact that people that loved, especially this era of the band, still had treasures yet unfolding from something that they probably thought, well, we've gotten what we've gotten and that's it. And then, oh, there's more surprises and treasures. So that had to be really cool now that I think about it. And I think about that too whenever they unearth some piece of music that, they believe was written by Beethoven or Mozart or somebody that, had so much work already out there, and we think we know it all. And then the next thing you know, somebody unearths something new. And, for the people that love that composer or that band or whatever the medium is, it's just such a treat. So I just kind of found that interesting. And I know I've seen this before with a bunch of these songs, but for some reason, when I saw that, it just struck me as particularly interesting this time, just imagining the feeling of that. And, when I've bought box sets or EPs with a bonus song or something, I know how it's made me feel. So just thinking about what it was like for people in '96 when that box set came out certainly would have been a reason to just jump in and purchase that right away. Now, before we get into the song, of course, we have some things to go over really quick. First of all, I want to say thank you to Uriah Heep, especially Mick Box, for all the contributions to the show, for all the insight, for the help, for supporting it, for all that good stuff. Dave White, who is the band's social media man, and he does all the sharing. And he actually let me know about something really cool that I was not aware of after listening to the 4-part episode where I shared the hosting duties with my friend Brandon from Metallicast. I really enjoyed talking to him. That was so much fun. But out of that, we had been talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And apparently, and I don't know how I didn't know about this, but I didn't know about this, there is a petition going around to help get Uriah Heep inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They've been around for 50 years, giving us amazing rock and roll music, and they should be in there. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and I said this before, there are bands that just, when they opened up the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, there are some books that should have just been on that shelf right from the beginning. Certainly Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, right off the bat should have been in there. I could argue a couple other bands, like King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And we could debate Led Zeppelin because I really go back and forth on how much I feel that they're defined as a hard rock band when so much of their music was a lot gentler than that. But they're known, their popular songs are more the hard rock stuff. So I guess that's probably why they're categorized that way. But in any case, I don't understand, my feelings on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame aside. I don't understand why this band is not in there. They certainly deserve that recognition. The validation for the fans is really what it's all about. And certainly, there's so much need for validation these days. And even though it's something that I find interesting, they certainly deserve that recognition. Now, I know that they're in I believe, a British version of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they're not over here in this country, and they deserve the accolade. 40 million albums sold. How are you not just automatically entered into that? Why does it have to be a stupid political thing? Well, because it's a stupid political thing. So let's help them out. I've got the link in the show notes. just sign the petition. That's all you have to do. If you want to throw a few bucks at it, I think that they need a certain amount of money to be able to register that petition or whatever. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but thank you, Dave, for showing that to me, sharing it with you guys. There's 180,000 people just on the main Uriah Heep page. This should be a no-brainer. So let's get that taken care of, guys. Let's get this signed and get these guys in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Ohio. I don't know why it's in Ohio, too. That also seems to be kind of a strange place. You'd think that maybe LA would have been the right place to open it up, or I don't know. Ohio just seems kind of random to me, but I'm sure there was some reason behind it, but it just seems kind of random. It seems like LA or New York or something would have been the place where there's like a music capital of the world. I don't usually think Cleveland or Dayton or any of those areas. When I think rock and roll capital, I think, New York, where there's a huge amount of rock concerts. I think LA, where so many bands are from and play concerts, maybe even like a Dallas, Texas or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, it is in Ohio, and they deserve to have their spot on that shelf just as much as every other band, if not more so. Not that I'm biased or anything. So anyway, so that's on the website. Please go and sign that petition. Looking forward to watching those numbers grow. And speaking of watching numbers grow, I'd like to take a moment to thank the patrons of the show. At the $5 tier, we have Kenny Wymore. At the $3 tier, shared by Peter Voss, Goran Eriksson, and Frank Thielgaard Mortensen. And at the $1 tier, speaking of love, hate, and fear, we have the time capsule-like airtight gravesite. Thank you all, folks. It definitely helps, especially now that I'm doing the giveaways. I appreciate the funds that you throw at the show to help me keep it going. Very much appreciated, as well as all the people that have left ratings, reviews. I've seen quite a few on iTunes. I think I've gotten all of them read, at least all the ones that I'm aware of. And thank you for those that have given the show a rating and those who have left like a written review. Very much appreciated. I'd also like to take a moment to thank my graphic artist, Scott Ladzinski, who did a beautiful job on the show logo, as well as my friends at Audionamics, who created the Instant Dialogue Cleaner, or also known as IDC. I will not do a podcast without this amazing tool because it helps keep all the airplane traffic noise, kids playing, dogs barking, hard-boiled eggs cooking in that little timer thing that goes off in my little hard-boiled egg maker, all out of the sound of the show. You guys don't hear any of that, and that is the reason why. I also don't boil eggs right next to the microphone because that would be really stupid. So there are some really cool people that are in the Deep Dive Podcast Network that I want to give a quick shout out to. Of course, we're going to start with Nate and John at the Deep Purple Podcast, my introductory drug into the CD alley that is the Deep Dive Podcast Network. Also, we have the Simple Man at Skinner to Reconsidered Podcast. We have Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the Other Side. We have Rye at Sabbath Bloody Podcast, Paul, Joe, and David at the Lap of the Pods Queen Podcast. And of course, as you heard last week, we have Brandon at Metallicast. And all those links are in the show notes, guys. If you also want to see and hear a cool podcast, check out Ace on Music. You can hear it on Stitcher. You can hear and watch it on YouTube. He is the band's manager as well as the manager for many other bands. And he has just some great insight into the music industry, does some interviews now and then. It's a really cool show. And you can also check out GottaHear'Em.all.com, where our dear friend Allegra has organized so many amazing just buckets of information about different concerts from the bands Deep Purple and Emerson, Lake and Palmer / Emerson, Lake and Powell, and many other tidbits along the way. But it's a fascinating site, and she does a great job just bringing out all that information. And of course, you can follow this show at scotthaskin.com. That is my website and the hub for everything that I do. And just click on the Uriah Heep podcast button or link at the top, and it will take you to the Uriah Heep podcast page, which branches out into a ton of other pages that I have created for all kinds of things, including links to all the band stuff, links to the individual shows that I do. It goes to the album and then each individual show. There are players on every one of those for every episode that has gone live. And then any other information that I have on there, links to the band's YouTube page, to interviews that I've done with the band, and all kinds of cool stuff. So go check that out. You can actually just check that out while you're listening. Unless you're listening on your morning commute or your afternoon commute or your evening commute, do not try to do that while you're driving. That's just a bad idea. But any other time that you have, feel free to check it out. It is just sitting there waiting for you to peruse. But if you want to go the more traditional social media way, we are on Twitter at Heep Podcast. We are on Instagram at Uriah Heep Podcast. And of course, the Facebook group, facebook.com/Uriah Heep Podcast. A lot of you have joined that group. That's probably the biggest place that I've seen people join is the Facebook group. And of course, I post all the episodes all over the place every time one comes out, which if you've noticed is 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Brand new episodes, 1 o'clock in the morning, LA time. I bumped it up from 2 to 1 because I'm not always up at 2 o'clock to post the episode. I'm always up at 1 o'clock. So easy for me to just post it before I go to bed and get those links out to you guys. Let you know the show's active, that I haven't started sloughing off, and I'm keeping up the pace that I have agreed to keep up for whoever. So thanks again, everybody, for your participation. Check out these wonderful podcasts and links. They're all just well worth your time listening to. Even if you're not a fan of some of the bands that these deep dive podcasts are for, a lot of times they're just enjoyable to listen to. And I found that I've learned so much about bands I didn't know anything about. Like I didn't really know anything about Queen, for example, but thanks to Paul, Joe, and David at Lap of the Pods, I've learned a lot about Queen. They're just fun to listen to people talk about bands that they're so passionate about that they were willing to start a podcast. So there you go, everyone. Thank you very much for all the support. I've loved watching the number of listens grow. I've loved watching the people following the pages grow. It's just been absolutely incredible. And I've met some really wonderful people throughout this process. But now I think it's time to start talking about this song, Love, Hate, and Fear. According to the CD, it is a demo version, unreleased demo version. Of course, it was unreleased as far as the albums go until that box set in 96. Let's give it a spin. Here it is. Very interesting drum intro, and I could tell just right off the bat from the way that it sounds, that reverb, that sort of unpolished sound a little bit, that it's definitely a demo track. It's been very consistent, the type of sounds that we've heard from something that goes on the album versus something that wasn't at least released as a single. And definitely has that sort of unpolished sound, raw to me. But it's pleasant. I like it. It just sets it apart from, what would have been, hey, we recorded the song, we just didn't release it for the album. It definitely has a different sound to it, a different texture. But interesting drum intro. You kind of didn't really know when it was going to end, but it was certainly a different kind of lead in. And then it came in, an extra quarter note off, which was interesting too, the way that he just hit an extra snare to bring it back into time, which was kind of nice. Just a really nice little groove there, something very basic. I want to say that's the same groove that Buckner and Garcia would later use, much later in the 80s, would use for Pac-Man Fever. Just a very simple, straightforward riff. I like it. I love the wah pedal work on this because normally this would just be a very straightforward thing, but to make it Uriah Heep-ish, it has to be different, right? It has to have some kind of unique properties to it. And just those little subtle pulses on the wah pedal really just kind of bring out a whole different feel for the riff. And then, of course, as we've talked about on other songs on this album, I love the vocals just all blending together throughout the verse. That's really nice. There's no particularly high harmony here at this point, which I think is good because then it would sound more like a chorus or a bridge. So it's just a really nice blend. It's just kind of this, just soft vocal that just comes in and out. It's powerful, but it just doesn't have like a hard edge to it the way that they all blend in together. And as always, a very beautifully mixed harmony as well. So I really like the feel of this. It's Trying to think of the song that it reminds me of. It's not Sunshine, but there's something familiar about this particular sound for the band. We don't hear it often, but when we do, it's always a really nice surprise. Well, there was a really nice structural change in that verse there. I like how it just went up for a couple of bars and then went back down again. It's such a simple riff. It's just such a straightforward bluesy kind of thing, but they just inject so much flavor into it that it really does make it unique. And you don't really think much. Well, I do because I'm analyzing the song, but just listening, you don't really think much about how simple what they're doing really is, but it just sounds so good. And then, of course, that change up, just completely unexpected, 16th notes on the hi-hat, straight 8th notes on the kick, which is really nice. You don't hear that a lot from Lee Kerslake, so that was a nice surprise. The kick does sound a little bit thin to me. I think it would have been nice if it would have been a little bit beefier, but it still works, because the song itself is not filled with keyboards and things like that it needs to cut through, so you're not missing out on anything that the drums are doing. But it could have been a little bit more powerful, maybe if there was a little bit more low-end push in it. But apart from that, no, it sounds really good. Love the vocals. Love what the bass line is doing. I feel like he's kind of restrained on this. He's playing the riff, but he's being a little bit adventurous, but he's also, not his normal, I'm really all over the place kind of self. So he's really playing more for the song on this one, and I think it really works. I think this is one of those things where keeping it simple is probably the way to go. You can easily overplay things and make them start to fall apart. And if you're playing a riff that's this simple, sometimes playing something aggressive over it is good, but sometimes it's nice to just stick to the foundation and, just put a little inflection in it here and there. We'll see where the song goes, because like I said, I've never heard this before. So I'll be curious to see what happens next. But so far, this is a hidden gem. One thing that I had a bit of a struggle with on the earlier albums that I feel is coming back here is just the balance of the audio that we're hearing. So I'm hearing guitar pretty much in the center. I'm hearing the main vocal and backing vocals mainly in the center, but I'm hearing the harmony now over to the right. So there's vocals in the middle and vocals to the right. There isn't anything really panned to the left to keep that balance. So it feels like I'm kind of wearing a hat with the lid on the side pointed down. It's a little bit weird to me. And again, I'm looking at this from here's how we do things in 2021 versus how they were doing things in the early 70s. So I have to take that into account. I can only judge it on what I'm used to now because I was not an expert in music at age 2 or 3 or whatever I was at this point. But for my taste, and I've heard how they've mixed things over these 7 albums, and they had done this earlier, and then they went to a more balanced mix, and now for this particular demo version, it's mixed back in that old way from the earlier 70s. So it feels a little bit awkward to me, but I love the sound. I love what the harmony adds to it. I just wish that it was a little more balanced, like maybe keep the lead vocal and one of the doubles in the center, put some of the other backing vocals to the left, and then the higher harmonies to the right would have worked a little bit. Or maybe pan some of the instruments out more, like put the bass and guitar more on the left to balance out the vocal in the right. I don't know, just something that would keep it level for me. because it feels a little off balance. But I like what they wrote and I like what they performed for sure. Well, I can hear an electric piano in there now that's kind of giving a little bit more balance, which will be nice. Right in that first instrumental section going into that last part, it felt kind of a weak transition for me. It was like I was expecting a bigger drum roll or a bigger intro into that next vocal part, but it was really kind of weak. Just those 3 hits just kind of stopped the train a little bit for me. But again, it's a demo version, so it was what it was at the time. But considering the bigger drum fills that we had in the drum intro, that just seemed a little bit weak to me. But that vocal part, that next section was really nice. I really like that. I like the sound of the electric piano coming in here. I think it really gives a good balance with the guitar. And the bass was a little more adventurous too during that last part, which is something that we're a little more used to. And it works in a section like that. Whereas if you were to play too much of that, I think during just the main riff, I think it would just overpower it too much. But then, you could play with it. You could adjust the guitar, you could adjust the keyboards a little bit to kind of, have like a riff and then a slightly busier riff and then a slightly busier riff than that or something to kind of layer it a little bit. But if the rest of it's going to be this straightforward, it's weird to have like one instrument that's kind of carrying a completely different line unless it's a solo. But overall, I think the blend is really nice with the organ. I love the sound of that or electric piano, I should say. Really love the sound of that. So good stuff. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a little bit more pronunciation on the wah pedal there instead of it just being a short, just a quick movement on the pedal. It's actually opened up a little bit more. It's becoming more defined and pronounced. I like that. I like that progression as the song goes on. It's kind of nice to have it not just be the same thing over and over, have it a little bit different, add a little bit more flavor to it. Very nice touch. Well, that certainly went in an interesting direction. I really like that last part. I like the the way the drums picked up there. First of all, I like that transition much better when it went from the Oz then into that vocal part there. I thought that transition was much nicer than the previous one. But how about that ending? So that was a little bit reminiscent of the way that the drums were played during that middle section of The Magician's Birthday. But I really like the bass too. They're just that the lower part and then the high accents and then the lower part and then the slightly less high accents. That was really interesting. I like that. Good idea. And of course the guitars that are picking up as well. It just has a good feel to it as it's fading out. Interesting topic. Very cool. Yeah. Good song. Good song. For the first time listening to it, I have to say, I like this one. I think it's a great addition to the album. And I'm glad that they included it on the bonus CD. Of course, I think I said that with every single one. There hasn't been a song that I haven't found a lot of good in, and this one's just got a great groove to it. It's really different. It's unique. It's heavy without being heavy. It has a good groove without it being too jazzy, except for that last section, which was really a nice surprise. Lots of good changes, really some unexpected stuff. Those eighth notes on the bass drum on top of the 16s on the hi-hat sounded really nice. Just really unexpected. And that's one thing I have to say this band is just a master of, is doing things that you just wouldn't expect. You never know where a song is going the first time you hear it, even though some of this was repetitive, like that 16th on the hi-hat part was done 3 times in the song. It's still like you don't know for sure whether they're going to do it, because this band is very well known for just going off in a different direction when you don't expect it. And that's one thing I've always loved about their music. Just as we saw at the end here, who would have seen that coming? So might I say again, another reason they deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So vote. Get your entry on there. Well, it's not really a vote. It's just signing a petition. But sign a petition. It's free. Anyway, guys, that is the song Love, Hate, and Fear. Good way to kick off the week, right? With a really great song. And we'll be back tomorrow with the final track from Wonderworld, if you can believe it. And that we'll talk about tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Be safe out there. Be smart. Take care of each other. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, The Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!